And a good evening to everyone. 7 o'clock straight up, a Wednesday edition of Double Jab Boxing Podcast. We're coming at you live inside the Playground Pier in Atlantic City on Tri-X 57, TriX57.com, powered by the Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame. We missed all you guys last week, a ton of boxing to get into. Rich Canunias alongside my good friend and co-host Rob Scott. We've got a ton of stuff. We've got, you know, what happens is when you miss a week, and everyone's running around, and everyone's got so many different things to do, boxing-wise, work-wise. It feels like you fall off the face of the earth, and then you got to play catch-up.
Yeah, we got to make up for lost time because within the past few weeks, there's been a lot of good fights and a lot of significant fights, and I think that that's something that we're definitely going to touch on on this episode. You know, and also we got to touch on, you know, this weekend itself or whatever. So bottom line is we have a lot of boxing to talk about.
We have a ton of boxing to talk about. And again, we're coming at you on TriX57.com. You can certainly tweet at us, Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame, Rich Q on Q. Check Rob and myself out on Facebook. And as well as Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame, which, by the way, it's right around the corner of Memorial Day. It seems like everyone is 99.9% confirmed with the inaugural induction class. All the information, ticket information, the discounts and everything. You've got the kickoff at the View, the Fight Fan Experience Expo, the gala, the after party, the after fair, the induction ceremony that's going to take place. You got Atlantic City as the backdrop on that Sunday. So all the information on ACBHOF, Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame.com. So we got a good show tonight. Aaron Snowell is going to join us as well. Great trainer, also doing some great things with the Jack Johnson statue in the documentary. But let's start first. Well, because we missed, we'll play a little catch up. We talked a little bit about, we talked a lot about the Jason Sosa and Vasily Lomachenko fight. We had Russell Peltz on. We kind of broke down that fight. For those tuning in tonight, we just want to play a little catch-up. I don't know. You know, it's interesting enough because Russell said there were so many people that thought Jason Sosa was not going to win 1 minute of that fight. And it just so happens that I really, as much heart as that kid displayed, simply outclassed. And Rob, I got to be honest, I don't even know if he won a round, let alone 1 minute of that fight. Well, he certainly didn't win a round, but 1 minute of the fight.
Well, like I said, during that fight or the build up to that fight, I was saying that, you know, I like a lot of fighters who, you know, there are a lot of people that will, you know, make their opinion as far as Lomachenko having just hands down that he's going to win effect. But, you know, I've seen a lot of things where, you know, a fighter can gut check. But I think that what has to be understood, and also what we saw in that fight, that you can gut check all you want, but a gut check without talent means that you're not going to prevail. And that's what happened because what's named, meaning Lomachenko, he came in with talent. And, you know, talent that we saw beforehand. But like I said, you know, in boxing, what happens is a lot of people, you know, put people, the cart before the horse, if you will.
Right. Now,
Lomachenko, I think that he's a you know, like I said, Stevie Wonder can see that he has talent. But let's not put him in a great category, which a lot of people are saying that right now.
I think it's because he's had, going into that, he's already defended. You know, he's won a world title. He was defending a title. That was only his 8th pro fight. And listen, I agree wholeheartedly. I always make the analogy sometimes
but technically he was a professional before he was a professional.
Right, with all the amateurs. But I say this a lot during my radio show during the week. Let's not stick him in the Hall of Fame just yet, but we are prisoners of the moment. And it tells you that Sosa, for as much heart and guts and moxie and guile he had, he was not going to win that fight. I mean, everything he threw, and I'm not saying in the literal sense, but just game planning wise, there was no answer. There was no counter. Lomachenko just danced circles around him. The volume of punches that he threw and landed was absolutely absurd. Lomachenko, that is. And, you know, for Sosa, it was a good opportunity to get a good purse, to have an opportunity to bank some money away, to fight for a world title. You kind of go back to the drawing board. Not the end of the world, but for Lomachenko, the question's going to be going forward, okay, who can beat this guy?
Well, it's the whole concept of what they say, you know, a fighter leading another fighter into deep water. And that's what Lomachenko did with Sosa. He let him into deep water, but, you know, Sosa, you know, let's not put him out the pasture just yet.
No, of course
but
not.
at the same time, Lomachenko is a talent, you know what I mean? And he's a talent to the point where, you know, it's going to take a special fighter to beat him. It's going to take, it's not only a special fighter, but sort of like we saw in the Porter and the Berto fight. It's going to be a style. A certain style has to beat Lomachenko. You have to get him off his game plan. You can't just in the case of his first loss. That style right there is something that I think that will offset him because what happens is he built the momentum versus Sosa.
Right.
And
You're talking the Salido fight.
Yeah, it's like a train. Once you build a certain momentum or whatever, it's hard to stop you. And that's exactly what happened with Sosa. Sosa, you know, once he got, you know, you can have all the moxie all you want. But at the same time, like I said, if you don't have the skill, not only skill physically, but skill mentally to overcome, he got back so far that he knows that he couldn't win.
But I think what was so impressive is, you know, he beats an undefeated Gary Russell Jr. He beats a Rodriguez. He knocks him out. He knocks out a Martinez. He stops a Walters. He stops. It's just the way he's doing it. And as you mentioned, yeah, he's had 300-400 amateur fights. Now, that can be a negative. That can be a positive. A lot of people will say, well, that's too many. He's never going to last in the pros, depending upon how much punishment he took during the amateurs. That's the old adage. But the fact that he's only done with a handful of fights, I mean, you start to say to yourself, he's just on another. I mean, honestly, he clowned Sosa.
Yeah, but when for the people who say that Lomachenko is not going to last that long because of his amateur career, whatever, let's just say that you never even knew about his amateur career and you just saw what you just saw. He doesn't show any signs of a person that's shop worn,
no doubt.
Person that has any kind of wear and tear on him. So Lomachenko is going to be around for quite some time.
And remember now though, he is 29, so he's kind of hitting that. You know, boxer's prime, 29, 30, 31. This is...
Yeah, but if you're not a beat-up fighter, you can last.
Sure.
And he's been beating up guys, not getting beat up. But so I think that's the key thing that's gonna, you know, put Lomachenko over the top. Now, granted, you know the way I feel that every fighter can be beat, but it's up to the other fighter to come up with a game plan in order to beat a Lomachenko style.
It's almost like you might have to catch him on that court off night. Little luck, little timing, catch him on the off night.
Well, it's an off night. You can definitely catch somebody on an off night, but at the same time, you also can do your homework. You know what I mean? Do your homework on the Lomachenko, like I told you before. I'll go back to my HBO theory, and that is being on HBO is a great thing because you get exposure. But after a while, being on HBO, you get exposed. People can tend to dissect you. If you don't dissect that fighter yourself as a fighter, you surround yourself by people, and he has great people behind him that can dissect his opponent's faults and so on and so forth. So I think that Lomachenko, you know, his manager is one of the he has an eye for talent to the point where I feel like, you know, he knows what he has in front of him as far as the Lomachenko. He knows, and also his other fighters. He's also the manager of light heavyweight, going up against Andre Ward, Kovalev. He's also his manager, whatever. He has an eye for talent, and he has a talent in Lomachenko, you know, and I think he knows that from the door. Lomachenko's a good fighter, and there's going to be a special fighter that's going to take a special fighter being on their best on that night to beat a Lomachenko.
Yeah.
So,
and you're right. I mean, that's certainly the case. All right, we're just getting warmed up. We got a ton of stuff to get into. Don't forget, we'll take you up to 8 o'clock. We're powered by the Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame. Right around 7:20, 7:25, Aaron Snowell will join Rob and myself. We'll take a quick time out. On the other side, we'll get into some of the action. The other night over the weekend, you got the big boys, the heavyweights this weekend as well. You had an interesting fight between Porter and Berto. What does that mean for Thurman, 147 going forward? So we'll dissect that. We'll break it down as well. Just getting warmed up on a Wednesday edition of Double Jab Radio. We'll come back on the other side. And again, don't forget, we're powered by the Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame. And you can tune us in right now live on TriX57.com.
whose eyes were closed well before he hit the canvas. The uppercut was perfect, George.
And not only that, he's getting his whole body into it.
It's Tyson all the way here in round number one. Vicious shots to the body.
What if your special event could walk on water? Suspended 100 yards out over the Atlantic Ocean, One Atlantic is Atlantic City's premier event venue for weddings, social gatherings, and corporate functions. With exquisite interiors and breathtaking views of the beach and Atlantic City skyline, One Atlantic is the region's most dazzling event venue. World-class gourmet catering and expert event planners help customize your one-of-a-kind event and deliver your unique vision. One Atlantic, bringing new dimensions to life's greatest celebrations.
All right, 7:12 on a Wednesday, right here on Tri-X57, Tri-X57.com, playground here in Atlantic City, a Wednesday edition of Double Jab Boxing Podcast, powered by the Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame. Don't forget the inaugural weekend. Check them out online, acbhof.com. All the information. If you've been following us for the last several weeks, several months, I mean, just a crop of inductees, the guys that we've had in studio on set. Again, you can check out all the podcasts on Tri-X57 on demand as well, but you've got everything going on. You also have, again, the Fight Fan Experience, which will be May 27th, right around 9:30 to 4. You got autograph signings, food and drinks, giveaways, interactive exhibits, games, vendors. So what Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame is really capturing the heart and soul of the true fight enthusiast. You know, this is interesting. Before we get, and again, Rob Scott, Rich Quinones here, before we get to Berto and Porter, I was having this conversation, and it's when we had Larry Hazard in a couple weeks ago, I had this conversation actually Monday, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this. You know, we're trying, a lot of people are trying to make the push for fights, more money fights down here, more fights, whether it's AMI or pro cards down here. And it's funny, too, because you say to yourself, how's Atlantic City, how's New Jersey losing out on some of these fights to, say, Pennsylvania? Because now you have to deal with the PA Boxing Commission. People have their own thoughts on how Greg Serb runs the PA Boxing Commission, right, wrong, or indifferent. They have their critiques. And some of them rightfully so, and some are justified. But it's almost though you're losing those venues or losing down here to those venues. And it's kind of interesting because you would say to yourself, you've got a ton of venues down here. You've got them in Jersey City. You've got them in North Jersey, Central Jersey. I just, like I said, I kind of find it pretty interesting just how it manifests itself where you got these hotels and these casinos in PA, and they're having some of the fights now. You know, it just almost seems like missing a boat on things.
Well, first of all, I think one of the Achilles heels of Atlantic City boxing is the word of mouth. In other words, they're allowing the word of mouth to be that Atlantic City is dead, and Atlantic City is not what it used to be, and so on and so forth. So what happens is people start to think that that's the way Atlantic City is. Atlantic City, and when those words were first being said, Atlantic City was still kind of good. But now people have fell off because they think that Atlantic City is dead or whatever. But we still have venues here to throw good fights and good venues, or good things or whatever. But I know one thing, working with a lot of promotions over the years, and the one thing that I've always heard, and that is, you know, in comparison, New York, I mean, it's a contradiction because there have been fights in New York, whatever, but at the same time, New York and Atlantic City, those in comparison to other places as far as fees, as far as taxes and things along those lines, those are the things that kind of pull or make a promoter say, well, no, I'm not going to do there. So from a promoter standpoint, it's not only taxes and those fees, but also the
Well, look at the premiums on insurance now in New York, and I'll give you a perfect example. The last several years, the New York Daily News Golden Gloves has been in the Barclays Center. So what happened this year is we had the first night at the Event Center in Manhattan. The second night, which, by the way, was actually during the day because they didn't want to have a conflict of interest with the Barclays Center on Saturday night, which I think hurt attendance. Friday night was about 1,400 to 1,700. It was sold out. And then we had it at the Aviator at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. But to go to your point, you would think because of all these new rules implemented with the insurance and the premiums and $1 million on each and every of these fighters, why go to Connecticut? Why go down to D.C. and deal with that commission, or Virginia or Maryland, Delaware? Okay, but you would think it would open up more opportunities for Jersey.
Well, they would seem that way, but like I said, when it comes to Jersey, it's not only the fees, but it's also just the aura of, is my fight going to sell? Is my card going to sell? Are people going to come out there? Or are people going to get caught up in that whole the whole thought pattern that Atlantic City is dead? And I think that plays a huge part in why some promoters who, like Larry Hazzard, like you said, when Larry Hazzard was here, I sat in on that meeting in which they had a lot of people come, the meeting of the minds, if you will, of the boxing people at Boardwalk Hall after one of the last fights. And, by me sitting back, I'm thinking, just because you're here doesn't mean that you really have
a vested interest.
Have a vested interest. Yeah, that doesn't mean that you're going to put your best foot forward for boxing. Everybody in that room said they did, but I don't know if everybody in that room really have the best interest or the vested interest or the best interest of Atlantic City boxing.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. Just because you have a meeting, it doesn't mean anything.
Sure.
And that's how I left that meeting. Larry said what he said, but this is what I'm saying. When I left that meeting, I felt like, okay, this person was sincere, but this person is blowing smoke up your behind. You know what I mean? So, it's like whatever.
A lot of talking in circles.
Yeah, but whatever's gonna happen as far as like advancement, it's gonna be happen from the effort that people put into it or whatever. And I just think that there were some people in that room that were willing to put their best foot forward, and some of them who were just saying that they're going to put their best foot forward. That's my point.
And that's certainly the case. What you're seeing, though, the MGM National Harbor, the Grand Harbor in Maryland, that is now becoming a new, I don't want to say a hotbed, but the perfect type of venue because it's gorgeous, it's spacious. You got more of the disposable income down there. They bring in some of the high rollers in that casino, and it looks like that is going to be now the next hot place where they're going to have fights going forward, money fights, title fights.
I think the things that have to be taken into consideration, and that is you have good venues, but at the same time, do you have good commissions? You know what I mean?
Yeah, the commission is it's. I mean, you've worked down there.
No, I've never worked in Maryland. No.
Yeah, I'm a little indifferent with the commission. To be honest with you, I think down there.
Well, you're a little indifferent. Where does that commission?
I don't think it's a strong commission.
That's what I'm saying. What
is
is it rate in comparison to a Vegas? What is the rate in comparison to a Jersey? Those are things that the promoters are also looking for as well. They're not trying to put their. You have to weigh it. Yeah, I want to save money. I want to do this, but at the same time, you want to have fairness. You want to have people who know what they're doing as far as the sport of boxing goes. And Jersey. There's a reason why Jersey. There's a reason why Las Vegas. There's a reason why New York. That's the reason why you hear these names or these cities constantly, because these people know what they're doing.
Yeah,
and they've proven it. Maryland. They still got, they still
Maryland,
they could
DC,
be
Virginia,
and I'm not saying that they're a bad commission, but in comparison, they're not a Vegas.
They're not up. No, they're not. No, trust me, they're not up to par.
But I guess.
But they're putting on some good fights down there, and there are some decent promoters down there. But you're right. I mean, it's not on the same level as those states that you just mentioned.
Well, yeah, like I said, and from a promoter standpoint, I think a promoter wants to, the promoter wants to save money, but at the same time, promoter wants fairness for their fighter. Promoters are going to want competent, officials. And I think that, Maryland, in due time, you know, one fight leads to another fight, and then leads to another fight, and then leads to another fight. Then they can be, because let's face it, Atlantic City and even New York, even though New York has a long history or whatever, but it's, at one point in time, they weren't the top. You know what I mean? So Maryland has to build its way up, and it has the ability to build its way up. But right now, you know, it's not, and it's a shame that you're able to even say that Maryland is even in competition.
They have some very good young boxers along the beltway.
No, I don't mean that. It's a shame that you're even able to say that Maryland has positioned themselves to be a threat to Atlantic City. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, sure. It sounds funny because
wild.
you're talking about
Yeah.
the 70s. Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right, 21 past 7 o'clock hour. We'll definitely get to Berto Porter. Last segment, you got Joshua Klitschko as well for Joshua's IBF and Vegan WBA heavyweight title. That'll be in London, Showtime on Saturday. You got a couple of local fighters as well over the weekend. Atlantic City's Osnell Charles, he'll be fighting down in North Carolina. So we'll get to those fights. Quickie timeout on the other side, we promise. Aaron Snowell will join us. We'll talk about his career, all the great champs that he's trained. He's doing some good stuff with the Jack Johnson documentary as well. We'll take you up to 8 o'clock straight up. Again, this is a Wednesday edition of Double Job Boxing Podcast alongside Rob Scott. I'm Rich Quinones. We are powered by the Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame and coming at you live exclusively on TriX57.com. We'll come back on the other side with Aaron Snowell.
Hi, I'm Jessica.
And I'm Karina.
And we're from Meet AC. Today we are here to take you inside the Claridge Hotel's unique and wide-ranging meeting and event space.
Now branded as a Radisson Hotel, the Claridge Hotel has transformed this historic property and its 500 guest rooms, which welcomes any type of guest.
The Claridge Hotel offers over 100,000 square feet of newly renovated convention and event space.
From corporate retreats to small conventions, Claridge can accommodate everything in between, and their highly qualified banquet staff will customize your event based on your requests.
The new state-of-the-art conference center features 15,000 square feet of function space, including a 6,400 square foot room perfect for general sessions or small trade shows, as well as 4 smaller conference and boardrooms.
The newly renovated Oceanfront Grand Ballroom offers breathtaking views of the Atlantic Ocean and the world-famous Atlantic City Boardwalk. With over 12,500 square feet, this stunning, architecturally designed ballroom is perfect to host your wedding or corporate event.
Also oceanside is the Ocean View Room, which is situated on the 3rd floor and contains 5,150 square feet of space. This space is perfect for a general session or social gathering.
The Celebrity Theater, situated on the 3rd floor, is versatile enough to host almost any event imaginable. With banquet seating bringing its capacity to 550, it's perfect for your general session. From performing arts to boxing matches, the theater lends itself to every need.
The main ballroom is located on the 6th floor and contains 2,200 square feet of pre-function space, which makes it adaptable for any corporate or social use.
Also located on the 6th floor is a Southampton room, which is adjacent to the main ballroom and pre-function space. This space can be used for a small meeting, hospitality room, registration, or office.
Last but not least, View is the newest and first rooftop bar in Atlantic City. With its indoor and outdoor arrangements, this 360-degree view is fit for any type of small meeting, celebration, or pre-function space.
With breathtaking views and delightful cocktails, attendees won't want to leave this magnificent space.
Don't forget to visit meetac.com to book your next meeting or convention.
All right, 7:25 Eastern Time. Again, we'll take you up to 8 o'clock straight up. This is a Wednesday edition of Double Job Boxing Podcast, powered by the Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame. Do not forget, May is right around the corner, the inaugural weekend. All the details, acbhof.com, alongside Rob Scott. I'm Rich Quinones. We told you we've been having guests come in and out the last several weeks. A lot of things going on with the weekend coming up, which is right around the corner. And very pleased to have Aaron Snowell on, trainer of the champions, also presenter of the Jack Johnson exhibit, co-founder of the Jack Johnson documentary, and he's kind enough to join us on a Wednesday. Aaron, how are you?
Good. How you doing, Rich?
We're doing well. We're doing well. We appreciate a couple moments. You know, Rob and I were just talking. You know, it's interesting. We'll get to everything you're doing with the exhibit and the Jack Johnson documentary. But, you know, it's amazing when you think about guys in your line of work, the trainers, where timing is absolutely everything. And you got your feet wet before you even went to Tyson, and you've trained a bunch of champions. But what's the biggest takeaway from your career as a trainer? What's the biggest takeaway when you look back and obviously, you know, the heyday with your career? Was it working with a guy like Mike Tyson? Was it training other guys and taking them to the top of the mountain? Just kind of give us a little insight on that.
Well, first of all, you know, I like to thank Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame, Atlantic City, and all the members of your radio show for having me on here. Atlantic City is something special when it comes to boxing. Atlantic City has a great era of solid boxing. You know, where heavyweight champions like Jack Dempsey set up a training camp. Jack Johnson had came down there. But just quick to say that for me, boxing has always been something special. I call it a gift from God. I grew up in a town, Pottsville, Pennsylvania, that's located on the foothills of the Pocono Mountains.
You're up there.
Yeah. But in that region, a lot of things in sports were birthed. The NFL, as we know it now, was formed there. It was the Anthracite Coal Region Football League. The Pottsville Maroons were one of the first teams in the NFL. And boxing was up in that region. Jack Dempsey had set up a training camp. Jersey Joe Walcott, who was a well-known fighter, was up in that area training. And I'll tell you a little funny story about Jersey Joe Walcott. When I was young, I was a teenager. And he was the commissioner at the time of New Jersey. And I was just a teenager. And I went to apply for a second license. And the people at the table who was having you fill out the application, they didn't want to give me the application because they said I was too young. And they said, go over there and speak to the commissioner, Jersey Joe Walcott. So I go over to Jersey Joe Walcott. I said, they told me to speak with you, that I had to get okayed from a license from you. And he goes to me, he goes, let me see you throw a jab. So I did that. He had his hand up. He said, well, how do you stop a jab? So I showed him that. So he said, show me how to throw a right hand. So I did that. He said, how do you stop a right hand? So I showed him that. So he said, how you throw a left hook? So I showed him how to throw a left hook. He said, well, how you stop a left hook? So I showed him that. He said, now show me how to throw an uppercut. So I showed him how to do it. He said, how do you stop it? He said, you go over there to the table and you tell him you're around about 5 years old. Get a license. But Jersey Joe Walcott at the time, he told me that he was up in Schuylkill County at the time. He trained up there. There's a place called Minersville Street that was happening back in the day with entertainment and things for the coal miners in the coal region. And he was up in that part of the woods. And Jim Thorpe,
sure,
he played sports up in that area, and Jim Thorpe is located in Schuylkill County. I say all of that to say this. Muhammad Ali's training camp was 6 miles from Pottsville, Pennsylvania. And that's how, basically, I got my start in boxing. From
Aaron,
Aaron, this is Rob Scott. How are you doing?
Good. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Rich and myself, working from, we've worked from a lot of different vantage points as far as boxing go. And, one of the vantage points we work for is the vantage point that you're seeing right now as far as the media side. And the media hasn't been one thing that always bugged me out about you and your story is that, and it's not unlike a lot of other people's story, because people want to harp on the negatives. But, you took a beating after the Mike Tyson fight, and people were coming at you from certain ways or what have you. But, but from my vantage point, I always thought that it was funny that they would come at you from that angle, but not give you credit for your accomplishments in the sense of you trained Frankie Randall when he beat the great, and at that point in time, presumably unbeatable Julio Cesar Chavez. But you don't get. I haven't seen that much write-ups from that angle. Does that bother you that people just tend to harp on one thing as opposed to harping on the many fighters that you have trained and the many fighters that you've built up?
Well, that is a lot of it's political. Politicals of fight the powers that be, what it is. Anytime that you're with a controversial figure who I've been with over 30 years, Don King, Carl King, and everybody else in his organization for a long time.
Aaron, not to cut you off, but that even goes on to what I'm saying where you've been down with Don King for quite some time, but at the same time, you trained Frankie Randall to beat Julio Cesar Chavez, which was Don King's man at the time or whatever. So you can't say that there was any.
They don't look at it like that. They didn't promote it like that. You have to understand at the sign of the times what was going on in that atmosphere. It was a political fight because Mike Tyson was the best thing since sliced bread at the time.
Right.
It's probably one of the hugest upsets in sports history.
Oh, no doubt.
But all of that comes with the territory. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. Okay? But however, there's many misleading things that float in the air that a lot of people had promoted in the media. First of all, they tried to make Don King look like a crook when it came to getting Mike Tyson. And that's an absolute lie because Jim Jacobs, Bill Caton, Cus D'Amato were still living when Mike Tyson fought for the title with Don King Productions. And they signed Mike Tyson with Don King because he had a deal with Jim Jacobs and Edwin Rosario. When Don King put Edwin Rosario and Julio Cesar Chavez together for a unification fight at the Las Vegas Hilton, Jim Jacobs said that was the most money that he has gotten for Edwin Rosario, and for Don to put that match together and give that kind of money is that he wanted to see if Don King would promote this up-and-coming. Mike Tyson wasn't even in the top 10 at the time.
Which is kind of interesting because Randall wound up fighting Edwin Rosario, correct?
And knocked him out.
Yeah.
He knocked Edwin Rosario out. Frankie Randall did. And funny that it May that you say that is that I was training Hector Camacho at the time, and Hector Camacho was in Don King's training camp in Ohio at the time, and he was training, and he was supposed to be the one who fight Edwin Rosario. And we had Frankie Randall sparring with Hector Camacho. And Carl King had called down to the gym to see if who was down there at 140 pounds that would take the fight. And Don called and said, "Who's down there?" We said, "Frankie Randall." He said, "Frankie Randall, he'll take that fight." So I said, "Yeah." I said, "Let me go talk with Frankie Randall for a minute." So they called. Carl did. He had a co-manager named Don Hale to see if they would take it. And Frankie told me, he said, "Look, I fought Edwin Rosario before in France." He said he hit me so hard everywhere. He said after that fight, I lost a close fight. He said I hurt everywhere from that fight. He said even in my feet, man. He said, but I lost 1 point. He said, "You got that right. I want to take. Yeah, I'll fight him. I'll fight him." So he was crying to get this match. And funny as it may, it happened in Memphis, Tennessee, the opening of the Pyramid down in Memphis. Frankie Randall had to get up off the deck. And what happened was, when he got hit, Edwin Rosario hit him with a right hand. He went down. It looked like he was going to be out. And when he fell right on the apron in front, was looking Carl King dead in the face. And he said all he could see was Carl King saying, "Get up, man. Get up. Do something." He's screaming. So he climbed up the ropes. He got back up on his feet, and the bell rang. And when the bell rang, we had to run, get him, and bring him back to the corner and revived him. And got him going. And he was in great shape, and he overcame it, and he ended up knocking Edwin Rosario out. It was a barn burner, a thrilling fight. However, that got Frankie Randall #1 across the board in the WBA, the WBC, and the IBF, all of those organizations. But people still didn't give him a chance, even after doing that to Edwin Rosario against Julio Cesar Chavez.
That's right, the sport of boxing. Talk to us a little bit. I know we got you for a couple more minutes. The Jack Johnson, the documentary, and kind of the push behind that, the idea behind that.
Jack Johnson being the first African American heavyweight champion is something unique, something special when it comes for times right now. And the reason why I know of Jack Johnson because of Muhammad Ali speaking of him a lot when he was in training camp, and always talking about Jack Johnson, what he did, and on how important it was for boxing. So when I was young, I looked him up, and I knew about him. I had a lot of artifacts about Jack Johnson from Muhammad Ali talking about him. And then an opportunity came to me down in North Carolina, where he passed that in Franklin County, North Carolina, to do something about it. And I would continually work because they want a marker where he was in an accident at. And then a young man, I was at a golf tournament golfing, and a young man who's one of the co-producers with me, Will Williams, came to me and wanted me to train him and all that. And we were training one day. He says, "Hey, man, why don't we tell me something about boxing and all that?" So I started telling him about, he wanted to know about Mike Tyson. So I started telling him there was a bigger fighter and greater fighter than Mike Tyson. And that's when Will said, "Oh, man, blah, 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 man, you should do something." I said, "Yeah, we are doing something." So we all got together to do it. And we applied for a film grant. We got the first film grant in Franklin County, North Carolina, for this here, to teach a new generation about Jack Johnson. how he rose to the heavyweight championship of the world, how he overcame racism, and all the great things that he did, such as being an inventor, a race car driver, an entrepreneur, owning a lot of businesses, such as a nightclub in New York that turned out to be the Cotton Club, owning gyms and stuff in New York City in what was known as Black Wall Street, and his conquests around the world, and always leaving a footprint, even when he was arrested and found guilty on the Mandan Act, and that was something that had to do with taking a white woman across state line. And that was from Pittsburgh to Chicago. A lot of people think it was in the South, but it was in the North from Pittsburgh to Chicago, and he paid for a ticket. And when he paid for the tickets, the U.S. Marshals was waiting there, and they got him for that, only because he owned a big, huge hotel and nightclub and all that, and they were after him. They thought he was running prostitution things with white women, but he was also married to a black woman, with a lot of people failed to realize in his first marriage. And he loved his mother, who happened to be black. And growing up in Galveston, Texas, his mother was a former slave. She also took care of white children. And Jack Johnson played with white children when he was young and growing up, because his mother took care of him. And his mother used to feed him cookies at the dinner table, and Oreo cookies, that was, meaning that you don't have to just be black on the outside, because Jack Johnson was real dark-skinned, but you can be black on the outside but be the same as whites are in the inside and be a great person. And that's what he taught him, and that's why he ended up turning himself in when he fought in Havana, Cuba. He came through by Mexico, because he did a fundraiser down in Mexico for his mother. And because he was homesick seeing his mother, he walked across the state lines and turned himself into authorities.
That's how Aaron, yeah. It's funny because, I'm listening to you and, you run down Jack Johnson's, life resume, if you will. A lot of people have been drawn to boxing for different reasons. A lot of people have been drawn to boxing, they'll say that, well, the first time I saw Ali, he's the reason that brought me to boxing. But I have to say that one of the people that really drew me to boxing was Jack Johnson, and not only being an African-American young man at the time, but also just the fact of, and he and I, coincidentally, we share the same birthday. That's one of the things that drew me to Jack Johnson, and I started studying on him. Wow. And it's very intriguing as I speak to you, as you speak rather to us about his history, and that's one of the exhibits. The Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame Fight Fan experience is going to be a wonderful thing because of the exhibit of your exhibit, along with all the multitude of exhibits that are going to be there. But your exhibit is one that I'm very, very interested in because the fact that I have followed the Jack Johnson story, and like I said, he's one person who, if people don't know him, I hope that they do come out and they do and do experience the Jack Johnson experience.
Well, let me tell you, Ray McCline, who's president of the Boxing Hall of Fame, he did a yeoman job by reaching out when his board met and they were trying to put some things together. I met Ray, a mutual friend of ours, Kevin Crum, had said, "Man, call Aaron Snow up, man. He'll hook you up with a lot of people." So he did, and right away we knew us before, but we never had a real working situation. And Ray McCline, I had hooked him up with Carl King and Don King, Larry Hazard and all of that. So it was like a reunion. I talked to the commissioner now, Mr. Hazard. He was excited. Ray was on the phone, and next thing I know, I get in touch with Don. Don said, "Hey, man, I want to talk to Larry," and him and Larry talked. Next thing you know, Ray and Don talked. Next thing, Don said, "I'm going to be there," and the Carl, everybody's happy, and you know, I think it's just going to be one exciting event for a terrific holiday weekend. That's because Atlantic City has so much boxing history to have Larry Holmes and Mike Rossman. Mike Rossman, Slim Robinson, who taught me how to train fighter, trained Mike Rossman. And Mike Rossman I know very well. He's getting inducted from Gotti, Michael Spinks.
Yep.
Yeah, and
the inaugural classes, yeah, it's stacked. It's absolutely stacked.
Well, it's not only stacked, but like he
real
mentioned,
boxing people.
Yeah,
Sure,
that's what I'm
absolutely.
saying.
Absolutely.
It's not only when you mentioned Ray and you mentioned the Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame like committee, if you will. It's not about, you know, a dollar. It's not about anything anybody else trying to get shine. It's about boxing that weekend, and I think that your exhibit is one exhibit that's going to really stand out because, like you said, like we all said, that you know it's about boxing. From that to the sculptures to, I mean, there's so many things that are going to be shown that weekend that I think that, you know, if you're a fight fan, if you're not here, and I think you're really going to be missing out on something.
Oh, you definitely did. And them young kids, them young little boxers, let me tell you that when I seen that reminds the two young little twins are going to be there, the barbershop thing that's in the booth.
Yep.
I said, man, this is incredible. But the Jack Johnson exhibit, we got the monkey wrench, as they called it, which is the adjustable pipe wrench that Jack Johnson is going to be on the display. Some of his posters and things like that from his fights from around the world, his first fight and the ones that he had with Jeffries and things like that, gloves. He also was in when he fought Jeffries, he challenged old Bernie Oldfield, who was a very rich man, but he was a race car driver, and he owned race cars. And Jack Johnson challenged him up there, and they ran on the track up there in Brooklyn, New York. Jack Johnson ended up losing. However, Jack Johnson said the only reason they asked him why he lost, he said, look, the way Burning was going around the track, it's going to be, I couldn't do that. He said, and that's why he won. But it was around the curve that he lost his life in Franklinton, North Carolina, and he had a hired driver, but we don't believe Jack Johnson. It's a whole story that we're going to unveil from our research, that we don't believe that he was driving. And also, you're going to be able, with technology that we have, Rob Underhill, one of the producers, he has different CDs of the fight. People can walk up, throw the CD in there. You can see the fight. They can put their in the 3D goggles and watch different films of Jack Johnson and all that. Very active. And also, we have one of the actors, John Perry, who plays Jack Johnson. He's a former fighter. He fought some amateur fights. He's going to be there talking and shaking at people, acting like Jack Johnson, singing, dancing, playing tricks. And also, we have Mr. Hillman, who's going to play Uncle Sam. And we're going to do some things with Jack and Uncle Sam, and people singing, people dancing, people having a good time, people shadow boxing. This exhibit is exciting. And plus, the average fan that comes up, we're also going to be filming there. You're going to be able to come to there, and we're going to ask you questions, put you on film, what you feel about Jack Johnson, if you know. and we're going to archive all of that stuff. So it's going to be an exciting place to be.
Well, listen, we're up against it. We appreciate the extended minutes. Great storytelling. We look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. I know the exhibit's going to be outstanding. We got to hit a break, but excellent job. We appreciate you coming on for a couple moments on a short notice on a Wednesday edition of Double Jab Boxing. So we'll definitely catch up in a couple weeks, though, Aaron.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, be
Have a
well.
good one.
Be well. All right, we're up against it. We'll take a quick time out. It's interesting too because the original first fight of the century they say was Jack Johnson in 1901 versus Jeffrey. So go figure. So great stuff from Aaron. We'll come back. We got about 10 minutes to play with. Rob and I will get into Berto Porter. You got the heavyweights as well, and then of course we'll take you up to 8 o'clock straight up right here on a Wednesday edition of Double Jab Boxing, powered by the Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame and exclusively on Trix57.com.
I know you won. All right. I'm going to call for you guys. 1, 2, 3, make some noise. All right. I think we got it now, right? We good? Sounds good?
All right, 7:53, so we came back a little early. We'll take you up to 8 o'clock. So we got a couple minutes to play with, so short break. Again, Rob Scott, Rich Quinones. So we'll get in. We were just talking about it, Porter and Berto. We just mentioned it during the break. We were actually talking about it off air. Go figure. It looked like an opportunity there where not only did Porter basically break the will of Berto, but it looked as though he didn't want to fight anymore.
Well, at some point, I mean, you know, I was talking to like a lot of people like afterwards, and they kept saying how it was an ugly fight. I don't think a fight is ugly when you could see one fighter breaking the will of another fighter. I think that there's a certain beauty in that, and I think that Porter fought his fight and Berto didn't fight his fight. So, which means that Porter broke the will of his.
But how
his
much
opponent.
is really left in the tank with Andre Berto? I mean, honestly. And everyone's complaining about Porter and the headbutts. And you clash your heads. It's not intentional. He said afterwards it wasn't malicious. It happens in boxing. But you're right. You saw a couple times where Andre would just kind of, not even a shoulder roll, but kind of crouch in a position, like a hidden position, and almost cover up a little bit and turn his back as if he didn't want to fight anymore.
As if he didn't want to fight. And like I said, Porter came to fight, Porter came to win, Porter came to advance. And I think that after feeling the heat, if you will, I think that Berto kind of threw that thought pattern, to the wayside.
So now what'll happen now is Porter will be in line with Thurman. You got Brook and Spence. You still got Garcia at 147. So now that's a very appealing division.
Well, one thing I think as far as Porter go, I mean, I think that let's not get it twisted. He did a great performance, and his style was tailor-made for a Berto. I think that one thing with Berto, like when you talk about fighters, you talk about fast fighters. Berto was in that category of a fast fighter. But Berto, if you really think about it, Berto was a fighter that was quick. There's two types of quick fighters to me. Fighters that are quick of hand, or three type fighters: hand, feet, and both. Mm-hmm. And I think that Berto was a fighter that was quick, has quick hands, but he was never a quick-footed.
But early on, he kept his range, and then all of a sudden, what happens, right? He kept his distance, then he range,
he was able to be brought down. But let's take. I think this is one of the reasons why Floyd Mayweather gets credit for when he does get credit, and that is he makes fighters. In other words, Porter made Berto fight his fight. I think that if he was with a more skillful fighter, like a Floyd Mayweather, meaning Porter, I think that he wouldn't have been able to, he would have been the bull, and Floyd Mayweather
would have been Matador. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Because Porter's that compact fighter. He's got that aggressive style. You know he's going to take it on the chin. He's going to throw two, maybe get hit 3 times, but he's going to land those 2 when he throws. So, and he always comes back.
But the thing is, he was hitting He was hitting Berto.
But because he kept getting him up against the ropes, too, with those body shots.
If he fights a fighter like a Floyd, that creates a certain kind of...
well, because you got to throw your game plan at, because he's not going to allow you to come forward.
No, he's not going to allow you to come forward. But what I'm saying is he's also going to make you miss.
Yeah.
You know, and when you start missing or whatever, that taps into your psyche. Where in that fight, the only psyche that was getting tapped into was the fighter that was getting tapped up, and that was Andre Berto.
So now you've got the possible setup, Thurman and Porter down the road. You know, at the end of the day, it's all about the money, making it happen. You got Brook, you got Earl Spence, who believes he's going to go overseas and he's going to beat Brook, which is going to be very interesting. I think a lot of people, I know it sounds crazy, I think they sleep on Spence, but be that as it may, I found it interesting that he was right next.
No, I think, and honestly, not to contradict you, not to disagree with you, but at the same time, I think that a lot of people are sleeping on Brook. I mean, there's a lot of people who think that Spence is going to just go in there and he's going to do...
Oh, I don't think so. No, he's not going to chop him down. But I found it interesting how when they were doing the interview on the set, you had Spence right next to Thurman. I still harken back to about a year ago where Thurman basically was saying, hey, you know, build your resume up a little bit. So be that as it may. And then finally, you've got the heavyweights this weekend as well. So you've got Klitschko in action. I mean, look, here's the thing. I look at this fight over the weekend, and I don't know. Is this a fight, Joshua and Klitschko, is this a fight to inject a little more life in the heavyweight division? Because to me, it's still stagnant.
To me, it's a fight where a lot of people are putting Klitschko down, and they're looking at it as a true change of the guard. And I think that people are overlooking Klitschko. But like I said, I don't see anybody on Joshua's resume that competes with a Klitschko even on his bad day. Now, let's just hope that because of his advanced age that his bad day doesn't turn into a terrible day. You know what I mean? Because the cliche is that a fighter can become old overnight. And let's face it.
But don't you think Joshua carries a ton of expectation, though, going into this fight?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he does carry a lot of expectation. But a lot of that has to do with not only because he's a good fighter, but he's a handsome fighter.
And here's another thing. Who made the investment in him? Showtime.
Well, yeah. Well, but at the same time, the HBO and Showtime are having that joint thing where Showtime's going to show the fight early and the HBO is going to show it.
But it's still an exclusive multi-fight U.S. broadcast deal for Joshua in 2000. They signed him in 2016. So, again, they won the rights to broadcast this fight as well going forward. And you mentioned HBO is going to rebroadcast the fight at 11. You know, if he gets past Klitschko, again, what's the thought of a unification clash with Deontay Wilder?
It will definitely pick him up, and people, if he beats Klitschko, and especially if he knocks Klitschko out, that's going to put Joshua on this whole different pedestal. They're going to think that he is the greatest heavyweight out there right now. But at the same time, Joshua still hasn't faced an Ortiz. He still hasn't faced even a Deontay Wilder, where we nitpick with Deontay Wilder, but at the same time, has he
waiting for the other shoe to drop?
Has there been anybody on Joshua's resume that you can say can beat an Ortiz or that can beat a Deontay Wilder?
He'll have the opportunity, and it starts Saturday against Klitschko, so it should be a good one as well. All right, we got to start wrapping it up on a Wednesday. Hour always flies by. Good stuff from Aaron Snowell. We appreciate a couple moments with him. Don't forget, we'll check out the exhibit, the Jack Johnson exhibit during the Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame inaugural weekend, Memorial Day weekend. All the information, you've got the guest list, you've got the inaugural class, the members, pretty much almost everyone is 100% confirmed. It's going to be a great weekend. ACBHOF.com. You got all the podcast on demand. You got the blog as well, all the stuff that Rob does. You can always follow all of us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. And don't forget, keep it locked into TriX57.com. We're always powered by the Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame. For Rob Scott, I'm Rich Quinones. Have a good week and enjoy the fights. We'll be back in the saddle next Wednesday right here from 7-8 for another edition of Double Jab Boxing Podcast powered by the Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame. And, of course, exclusively on TriX57 and TriX57.com.